Good morning, everybody, and welcome to East Devon District Council's Audit and Governance Committee on the 27th of November. I'm your chair, Councillor Chris Burrup. I'd also like to welcome anyone watching and meeting via the live streaming. I should say that we're not expecting any fire alarms today, so if we do hear an alarm, please exit using the nearest available marked exit and we assemble in the car park behind us. So please be aware of that. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call and declaration of interests of committee members here present.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So I'll start with you, Chair. If you can confirm that you're present. Councillor Christopher Burrup.
Present and nothing to declare.
Thank you very much. Our Vice Chair hasn't been able to join us yet. Moving on to Councillor Ian Barlow. Good morning.
Good morning, Present, and nothing to declare that I'm aware of.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Councillor Roy Collins. Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you have anything to declare, Councillor Collins?
No, I have nothing to declare, but I'd like to make a little statement.
Not at this stage.
My iPad, I've not been able to get any internet for the last 12 days. I've been to Strata Monday of last week. They promised to phone me back, tell me what was wrong. I came to strategic planning on Friday and Ed Freeman told me to go back to Strata and I've heard nothing from them. I've had no internet, so I've been unable to access any of the documents for this meeting. I came in here Thursday and you lot were afraid of a bit of snow. And I stayed in here from 12:15 till 5.
Councillor Collins, thank you. Thank you. I absolutely hear what you say, right? We had to adjourn and postpone the meeting from Thursday because virtually nobody else could get here. So I'm sorry that you haven't had access to the documents.
How am I supposed to cope with this meeting?
Let me finish,
I don't
please.
want to be on this committee in the first place.
Councillor Collins, we do have a hard copy of the documents and you could have requested those at any time. So I'm happy to lend you the hard copy now if you wish for them. Do you want them?
Working now.
So you don't want the hard copy?
No.
Okay, thank you. And you have no interest to declare?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Next, Councillor Charlotte Fitzgerald. Good morning, Charlotte.
Good morning, President, and I have no interest to declare. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Mike Goodman, please. Good morning, Mike. Bear with.
Present. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. We're all in suspense there as we were waiting for your announcement. Do you have anything to declare this morning? Thank you very much. Moving on to Councillor Colin Brown, please. Good morning, Colin.
Good morning. Present. Nothing to declare.
Thank you very much. I don't see Councillor Steve Gazzard or Wibley. And last but never least, because I always forget you, don't I? Councillor Yehudi Levine, good morning.
Good morning. Nothing to declare. Just to say we had 10 centimetres of snow last Thursday.
Thank you very much for your weather update too. I can confirm, Chair, that you are quorate. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And we'll move on to agenda item 1, which is minutes of the previous meeting. If anyone has a comment on the sets of minutes from the 19th of September 2024, please do this by raising your hand. If I have no hands raised, I will take this as an indication that you all agree the minutes of the previous meeting. Okay, there are no hands raised. Minutes are agreed. Matters arising from those minutes. We did ask if more audit resource was needed for controls in the housing and services and finance contract management. So that was one of the items that was raised on the minutes of the previous meeting in item 19 on there. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
So we have an update from SWAP coming now regularly to our ELT, and that starts week after next. Whether Lisa knows that or not, I don't know, but we've agreed the principle, but perhaps not the date. So Lisa will be coming through to our ELT, give us an update of where we are with all the audits, and where we are with the recommendations as well, in terms of making sure that we're on top of that. But also we'll discuss the rolling audit plan, and we can discuss that with the backdrop of the audits that are on your agenda today.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Barlow.
Sorry, on that point, whatever, I mean, I've got concerns with the HRB thing, with the maintenance costs that are in the, I have mentioned this to some, but in the month 5 to month 6, the huge difference between the two. And I'm just concerned, are we on it? I will be bringing it up later. I don't know if this is the time to bring that up.
It's certainly not the time to bring it up.
Of course it isn't. No.
Councillor Barlow, thank you, but I hear what you say. So we're still dealing with matters arising from those minutes. So from me, update on the Gallagher Bassett risk review. So this was mentioned in item 22 on the previous minutes. So it says, to support this work, the council had engaged with a risk specialist from Gallagher Bassett. The report proposed a project to undertake the review and project plan, which have been approved by the senior leadership team. So we just need to know where we're at with that, please.
Thank you, Chair. So all the directorates have been through their workshops and put together their assessment of risks and risk appetite. The next stage is a executive leadership team similar workshop to agree the strategic risks, but also reflect on the directorate's risks being raised. And that's due to come back to your next committee in terms of a report.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anyone else got any questions about the previous minutes? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is apologies.
So, Chair, I've had apologies from Councillor Kim Bloxham. Are there any other apologies that members are aware of? Please speak now. Thank you, Chair. Back to you.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham's apology is noted. Declarations of interest we have already dealt with. Are there any declarations of interest from outside the committee that anybody wishes to declare? Oh, okay. Thank you. Public speaking, I don't believe we have any of those.
No, we don't have
registered.
any public speakers this morning, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And matters of urgency, I have none. This is going very well. Agenda item 6, confidential exempt items. There is one confidential exempt item which officers recommend should be dealt with in this way on item 18.
Chair, sorry. On that matter, can someone explain why that is confidential? Because again, when it first started, it was all the figures have been out in the public.
I will deal with this now. We could leave it till that item, but I personally took advice on this from the monitoring officer as to why it should be classed as Part B, and was given specific terms that it's identified, or it could be deemed to identify officers at fault, and putting that into the public domain, as well as naming a company in the report. It could be, although that company is in administration, it is still a legal entity, and that could put the council into conflict. So the advice from the legal advice received was that this should be a Part B report.
So we have to vote on this, I believe, at the end of the day. This isn't just your thing. At the time or now?
No, at 18.
At 18?
Yeah. Okay.
Whether it's held in seconding it in Part B or not? I thought once we go into Part B.
There is a vote at item 18 as to whether we agree that it should go into Part B. Thank you. So we move on to agenda item 7, which is internal audit charter and mandate. And I turn to a report from Lisa Fryer. Welcome, Lisa. It's not Lisa.
Unfortunately, I'm doing the report today for you. So, yes, the Charter and Mandate report. So, a bit of background to this. We would normally bring the Charter to you alongside the internal audit plan. The Charter essentially sets out the purpose of the internal audit function, how we work, who we report to. The reason we delayed it this year is because we've been waiting on updates to the global internal audit standards. That guidance has now been issued, so we have now presented the Charter to you. It's on pages 6 to 15 of the agenda pack. The new standards take effect from, I believe it's the 9th of January, from memory. But the actual content of the Charter is very similar to previous ones that you will have seen. For the avoidance of any doubt, the Charter includes references to the Chief Audit Executive. That role is the Head of Internal Audit role currently held by Lisa Fryer. On pages 9 and 10, this sets out the proposed mandate, organisational position of internal audit and the reporting lines through to yourselves as the audit committee and to the executive leadership team through the director of finance. This is very much the same as previous versions of the Charter. Your role as the audit committee is outlined on page 11. There's a list of things there, so I just wanted to take the opportunity to see if there are any questions about the items included in that section of the mandate.
Any questions from committee?
Chairman, about the whole item, have you finished presenting it? Are you asking questions on the whole paper?
No, I just want to say, if there are any questions about that particular section,
Can I remind you we'll finish the microphone and then we can hear what Conor has to say.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to see if there are any questions about that particular section, because that section outlines your role as a committee under this mandate.
Well, I had one question. How can we make sure, because there's a lot of important stuff in there, really, when you read just one of those lines, it's very important. How can we, as an audit committee, make sure we deliver that for our council and for our residents? Because I thought it was pretty tough stuff in there that we've got to deliver.
Sorry, yes. We will obviously have a role in helping you to ensure that you deliver on those items. We recognise that there are some additional things that have been added in the standards, and we need to do some work amongst ourselves to make sure that you're in the position to be able to fulfil that role.
Yeah, Councillor Fitzgerald.
I just wanted to make the observation that when this meeting was scheduled for last Thursday, we were going to have a training before it with SWAP, and that probably would have helped us understand this list a lot better, and so maybe we'll be in a better position to respond to that when we've had that training.
It certainly would. Can we confirm if and when that training is going to be rescheduled for, please?
Yes, we're looking at doing it because we want to coincide it with your meeting, so you can have a morning, so you can have a session, lunch, and then go into your formal committee meeting. Because this one had to be arranged quickly, there were lots of other appointments around here, so we couldn't do the training at the same time. So we will bring it back in for your January meeting. But yeah, it's just unfortunate with the cancellation of last week's meeting.
Councillor Barlow.
And can we confirm that will be taped, because I'm not here in January, so if we can just confirm that that will be recorded so that I can have that training. Cheers.
Yeah, confirmed. Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
May I just ask members and everyone else, when they speak into the microphone, because otherwise it is very difficult to hear what you are saying. So just move the microphone towards you and help me. I'm frail. I'm over 65. You know, I'm an OAP. Thank you.
But you are of tremendous value, Councillor Levine, so thank you. Okay, any other questions at this stage? In that case, back to you, Connor.
Thank you. Okay. The next part of the documents, which is on through pages 11 through 13 of your agenda pack, cover the Chief Audit Executive's responsibilities. That sets out the different types of information that we're going to have to report to you as a committee to help you to fulfil your obligations. Following that, we also have to continue to provide updates to you on the external assessments that we have to have as an internal audit provider. There's a requirement for us to have what's called a quality assurance and improvement program. This basically assesses whether we're complying with the global internal audit standards or not. That external assessment takes place every 5 years. Our next assessment is underway now, I believe. So there will be an assessment of where we are currently, and going forward we'll have to continually self-assess against the new standards until the next external assessment is due. I didn't have anything else more to say on this particular item, so I just wanted to ask if there are any other questions about the content.
Okay, Councillor Goodman.
Yes, thank you for that. The one thing that struck me with this is an updated audit charter mandate. What I would have found useful is what are the differences between what we did in 2022-23 to what we're going to do going forward, just as a summary. And I was trying to fit it, and I struggled to do it. And I just wonder, when we do our training, whether we could understand that, because the report's one thing, but what does it actually mean to us that we've not done before, what we're going to do going forward? Thank you.
No, that's a fair point, and we take it on board. The reality is that most of the changes to the standards really incorporate standards that were already there, but expand on them. So we've tried to summarise what this is going to mean to you in a way that's possibly more accessible than if I were to provide you with the whole standards, which is a 120-page document, which I'm sure you possibly might not want to look through. But yes, there are some changes what we need to do. Those changes are reflected in this document, and we obviously work with you to make sure that we're meeting our obligations under the standards.
Any other questions from committee? Okay, just 2 points from me. As Connor, and you may have missed this at the beginning, emphasised, the Chief Audit Executive, who's mentioned and whose responsibilities are very detailed in this, is actually Lisa from SWAP. So, you know, we subcontract that out effectively to Lisa, and she takes on that duty for us. And we appreciate that, Lisa. We genuinely do, because we don't want to do that. And secondly, internal audit itself is getting audited. So, you know, every 5 years they get audited. So, but we pay for it. Don't get us wrong. It's just a little bit of a chain here of internal compliance. But one is due. We're underway with it at the moment. We'll get a report on that in the new year, no doubt, and onwards. Yeah, Councillor Barlow.
Sorry, look, I'm new to this. I just want to double check. The internal audit is there to, when things are a little bit out of the ordinary, check what we're doing, just making sure that we're all on the point and everything is correct, so that there isn't any things that surprise us going forward. Is that right?
Connor, do you want to comment on the role of internal audit?
Our primary role is to provide you with assurance that things are operating in the way that they should be operating. Management is responsible for preparing what we call the control environment, so making sure that your risks have got processes in place to manage those risks, and we will provide assurance on whether those controls are operating correctly. So that's our primary role. Yes, we also have a role around, you know, if things need to be investigated, we often get involved in that. But our primary role is providing assurance and advice to help the council meet its risk management objectives.
Thank you. And it is good practice to have internal audit. Some organisations operate it within their organisation, Some operate it as we do, contracted out, and the advantage of operating it contracted out is you have complete independence at that point, and you can rely on it. Okay.
Is it real time, or does it just look at historically?
Either. Okay. Yep. Okay. We have a recommendation, which is members are requested to approve the internal audit charter and mandate for 24-25. Do I have a proposer for that, please? Councillor Goodman. Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Barlow. Thank you. All those in favour? Okay. And any against? Any abstention? Councillor Collins. Thank you. And thank you, Connor. We move on to where are we? Sorry, too quick. Internal audit progress report. So, thank you. This is a report from
Back to
Connor
me.
again. Thank you.
Back to me. So on pages 17 to 43 is our latest progress report for you. The report there reflects the position as of the 31st of October 2024. The key things for us to report there is that since our last update, which I believe was in September, we've completed 4 more audits. We're now at a point where almost half of the combined internal audit plan, so the half 1 plan and the half 2 plan, where almost half of that is either complete at draft report stage or in progress. I will say that since we've written this report, we've finalised 2 other audits, both of which have received reasonable assurance. We've identified during this period 1 high risk that we want to bring to your attention around housing electrical safety, which we'll come back to in more detail later on. Also, since the last update to committee, we've met with all of the directorates to review their current outstanding internal audit actions. That has resulted in us getting updates for most of the actions, and in most instances, timescales for those actions have been revised in line with what the responsible officers thought was realistic. We've also had 1 additional confidential review added to the plan. That review has already been completed. On page 21, we've mapped out the internal audit plan against the council's strategic risks. Following your comments at the last committee meeting, we've made sure that that now includes both the audits that are completed and the audits that are planned to take place by the end of the year. Our detail, a breakdown of our progress is on page 23. So at the time that the report was written, we had 22% of the audits were complete, 13% were at draft report stage, 13% were in progress. And as I mentioned earlier, there have been 2 more audits finalised since this report was written. In terms of limited assurance audits, there are 2 audits that are summarised in this report on pages 25 and 26. So the first of those is ethical governance. The purpose of that audit was to provide assurance around the processes for declaring declarations of interest and gifts of hospitality covering staff and members. I just want to give you the opportunity to ask if you have any questions about that particular audit at this point.
Anyone from within committee want to raise anything? No?
No.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you,
Councillor
Jack.
Levin.
As an untrained member of the committee, could I ask you one thing? Actually 2. The first one is, league tables are in. So where does our council fit in with the league table amongst all the other councils that you've got? Are we top of the class? Are we in the naughty corner? Or are we just about all right? And the second one is, it's something that I find a little bit difficult to understand, and maybe you can help me. An awful lot of the points that you've made in all the list of agreed actions, they are administrative actions, like registering this on that website and putting that into that program. And what I find difficult to understand is who benefits. Would you be able to help me out?
So in terms of your first question about league tables, I'm not sure if you're asking about league tables for the council as a whole, or are you asking about a particular function? I'm not sure there are comprehensive league tables that exist at that level. In terms of the second question, obviously we raise points during audits that reflect what, we don't tend to raise points during audits unless there's an issue that needs to be addressed. This report has the issues that we consider to be high priority or medium priority in it. There are lower priority actions that aren't included in this as well. To answer the question who benefits, well, I would hope the council benefits from us raising these issues, because if we've raised them, they tend to be for a reason where we think something problematic has happened, or the council's controls that they've put in place aren't working as well as they either hope to be working or should be working. I don't know if that helps you as a response, but I'll go back to you.
Okay.
No, my worry is really we're spending a lot of the actions require expenditure of manpower, time, etc. So are these resources that are being used usefully, or do we as a council, will we do better by deploying them elsewhere where they're going to be of greater use to our residents or whatever you want to call them?
Councillor Levine, maybe I can ask Simon to answer that.
So just coming in on your 2 points, I think the good indicator is the annual assessment that SWAP present to you. So annually they have to make an overall opinion on the authority's position. We've been reasonable for a number of years now, and I think it's worth looking at that, if comparing it to other authorities to see where we sit. Reasonable's in audit world quite a good assessment, but there will be authorities that do better than that and authorities do worse than that. And I think you do actually, I've seen a table of where your partner authorities sit in terms of that annual opinion. So I think that's one place to have a look at. In terms of recommendations made, remember when they come to these reports, they've been discussed with management, agreed by management. So there is a recognition that there is a need for those improvements to be made, and the resource implications should have been taken into account when agreeing to those recommendations.
Thank you. I'm educated now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair. You just want it on what we've just had. You don't want it on the rest of the report yet. Good. Okay. Just going on Yudi's point there, you know, my only concern is the planned progress. Are you happy as our auditors that 52% not started? This is the planned progress, 24, 25. We're over halfway through the year now. 22% complete, whatever. I mean, is that good? Are you happy with that? There you go.
Yeah, we're reasonably comfortable that we can deliver within the year as planned. So yes, we have a slightly lower than half percentage complete or in progress at the moment. Again, we've finalised a couple more audits and started a few more audits since this report was written. But we think we're in a good place to actually deliver by the end of the year. So not necessarily by the end of March, but by the time that we have to provide you with the annual opinion, which would be June or July time. So yes, we're relatively confident that we are not going to have an issue fulfilling our obligations to deliver this plan.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Page 23, we've got the progress update shown in percentages. Now, if I remember rightly, the actual number of audits that you are undertaking is fairly low. Can you tell us what those numbers are, what the total number is that we're looking at? And if I may, if it is a low number, can we just have it in numbers rather than percentages? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we can take that point going forward, absolutely, if that's a request from you. I'd also make the point that if there are any other requests about the formatting of this report, please do contact us about what you'd like us to include, because we should be able to accommodate most things. Appendix E is the full breakdown of the plan, so you can see which orders have been completed and which orders are at which stage. I can quickly count those for you if you'd like. Appendix E. You've beaten me to it.
12 yet to start, but as Connor said, we have started other audits since this was produced, so it's probably 10 now.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Councillor Goodman.
Just a quick, but am I not right in saying that you have to be flexible? Because if Simon or one of the directors came up with something they desperately want you to look at as a priority, that would take over this plan. The plan's important to have, but a priority set by the council would supersede that.
Yeah, and that's very much the case this year. As you will see that I think we've got like 6 new pieces of work that we've added. Some of those investigations. We've got a risk-based approach. Things are changing in the council all the time. So where there's risks, additional risks identified in the year, that we want to be flexible to respond to those. So that has been a contributing factor this year.
Okay, thank you. Just conscious of time, shall we move on to the next part of the report, please, Connor?
So I've lost my place. So the next ones, we covered the ethical governance one. So the housing electrical safety one was the next one we wanted to raise with you and ask if you had any questions about that at this stage. The scope of that audit was quite specific. It was to look at the progress the council had made since it had discovered significant backlogs with electrical compliance works early in 2023. At that point, there was a referral to the regulator for social housing, so there was a monitored action plan in place that was being monitored. That monitoring ended at the end of last year. So we had to cover particular sections in that audit, which were to give an update on where things were looking like they were in terms of the level of the backlog. We were also asked to look at the electrical safety policy and make sure that was compliant with legislation and best practice guidance. And we were asked to look at performance data. So that was the remit of that particular audit. The key issues for us that we wanted to raise were that the officers in place at the time, and one thing I will say and make very clear, is that most of the individuals that we spoke to during this audit happened to leave during the audit. There is a new housing director in place and new compliance team in place that have taken these actions on. So we've had some issues in terms of closing out with trying to get answers to some certain questions where some information wasn't available because people had left. But they have agreed with the action plan. They have agreed to do certain things in that action plan, and we're satisfied with what they've agreed to do. The key issues for us were around the system that was being used. The system that officers were using for compliance, remember we're talking about this purely from a compliance perspective. We've not looked at any other aspects of this system. But the officers in place at the time were not happy that the system really facilitated their role. There were spreadsheets being put into place to try and manage this system. There's obviously quite a significant number of houses in the housing stock. There's over 4,000 properties in this stock. And there were issues with getting data from one data source into another into the system, making sure those married up. We also found at the point of time that in terms of entering information into the system, there were no quality checks being done on that. The officers involved, so that was down to capacity. We also found that some problems where we couldn't verify some of the performance figures that were being reported because backup information had not been retained. So those were the key issues for us on that particular one. I'll hand over to you to see if you have any questions about the findings that have been put forward in that summary.
Any questions from committee? Councillor Pitchard.
Thank you. The assurance you've given us is limited. So what is the plan going forward for assessing the progress of this? Thank you.
So this will fall under the usual action plan tracking process that we have in place. So you will receive summaries of the progress through this report. So I believe the next appendix is the breakdown of all of the internal audit actions. So the responses will be in that section. But again, the housing service, they have advised that they are going to look at buying additional software to address the issues that we've found on that particular area. We've also been told by, I see Catherine's actually here, not here in person, but through listening in. We've also been advised by the director that the concerns that we raised around quality assurance checks on the data going in are now being addressed. There's now a spot checking process, so that is already happening. So yes, again, the full action plan is included. I believe it will be uploaded to the All Members website if you wanted to look at that, but the breakdown of the actions and the progress updates that we get will come to you through this report.
Councillor Goodman.
It's really following on from that point. When you say it's in Appendix D, it just lists there. It doesn't give the detailed action of what the service is going to do. We as members, are we going to see what action? Now, if it's already come out, I apologise, but I don't remember it.
What I'd like to suggest is we've actually got Director of Housing on the screen here in virtual mode. So by the powers of very primitive technology, we're going to try.
Before she does, Chair, can I just put my point?
If it's related to this, yep, okay.
Very much. Yeah, it is, because obviously I'm not a member of HRB, but I sit on HRB, and HRB has for the last 2 meetings, I believe, been told that all the electrical works are up to date, everything's been done. But now we're putting more budget to it because we're concerned that it isn't all done. I don't know. I realise that HRB is probably the place to drill down into this.
Again, I think this is probably something that the Director of Housing can probably address, and I think we're potentially looking at 2 different things. So there's one thing for electrical certification to be up to date. That's one thing. There's another thing for internal audit to find failings within internal processes which are of concern, and these get highlighted as separate points. So those are, potentially looking at apples and pears, but I'd like to put it over to Director of Housing, Catherine.
Go on, Catherine, can you speak?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, and thank you for allowing me to join in such a way. I know it's a bit unusual, but I'm watching on an iPad, watching the meeting on YouTube on a separate iPad, so there's a slight delay, so apologies for that. As Connor said, really, there were whilst there were no huge surprises within the report that were presented, because a lot of the information was obviously identified as part of the self-referral prior to my joining. There's been significant changes to personnel, specifically within the compliance area. We've recruited an excellent, experienced electrical compliance surveyor who's totally reshaped the function, which has now given us greater management, improved reporting and oversight. We've tackled poor performance within 2 contractors. We've reported this to HRB. We've reported that poor performance of 2 contractors, and we've now split our working with Ian Williams on delivery. And to just give you a real snapshot, we've reduced the number of remedial works needed from 900 to 550 since July. So that's literally just within the last 3-4 months in terms of by the time that we've come here. So, it's a significant amount of work underway. In terms of the new software, we're currently trialling. We're just testing out new compliance software, which promises to offer all of the resolutions that we need. which will bring together all compliance work streams, because I think that does highlight a kind of concern really that we kind of have all of that information centrally. That will then be loaded into a cloud-based system, which we hope then we'll be able to work with if we do decide to move forward with it. We will look then at working with our external contractors to be able to directly input into that as well, which will hopefully improve efficiencies and make sure that that data is live. So obviously that will all go through the necessary due diligence and then will be reported to HRB as a matter of course. In terms of the other actions on there were 9 actions required, and as Conor has already said, an awful lot of work is already underway on those. A new policy has been written, for example, and that now needs to go through the process that we need to follow for that, and then we'll be going live on the website. We are reporting on monthly reports and producing KPI figures, as well as getting bi-weekly reports on EICR remedials programme. We are giving regular updates still to the regulator, and we're answering any kind of queries they may have as and when we provide that data to them. So there's, I mean, I've got a kind of breakdown if that would help, and if the board would like that. I've got a kind of breakdown really for each of those actions, a kind of update that is better than my verbal update that I've just given. If that would also, we could also look to formalise that and send that out if that helps. But Conor and I, as he said, Conor and I went back and forth on this because obviously I picked this up. I think Conor, I think you and I had one meeting when I first started, and that you were kind of bringing this to a close, or you were kind of looking at so kind of finalising some bits and bobs. So this is literally kind of something that I've picked up as well. Up and running. So we did go back and forth on a number of things because I knew the work that was already underway, but obviously this is about assurance, and we need to make sure that all of those things, and Conor needs to, any audit needs to see those things actually in function rather than kind of in train, really, don't they, to get that assurance. So I'm confident that we're moving in the right direction. I'm also confident that we will continue to work with audit, and we will ask them to come back in and look at the work and the progress that we've done in line with the action plan that we've produced together.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Yeah, Councillor Barlow.
So thank you very much for that. Compliance obviously is a very big thing for the council, risk and all the rest of it. Are we not concerned that SWAP didn't pick this up before? I mean, again, is this not a really important area that they should have been looking at? And suddenly we find ourselves in this position where we're not compliant, not doing it, the systems aren't right. I mean, just about everything has gone wrong there, and yet we're now sorting it out. Or is that their job? Am I being naive here?
I think it's probably fair to say that internal audit look at what they're directed to look at, and and they can only look at certain things at one time, not everything all the time. So it's actually down to management to ensure that we are compliant. It's, you know, if internal audit pick up our non-compliance, then it's a failure of management. Any other points? Councillor?
Yeah, thank you for that, Catherine. I think what would be helpful is you've listed off all the things you're doing, basic an action plan. My recommendation would be, I think that needs to go to the HRB next meeting, so because they're still responsible for all this, I think them endorsing it and having a progress report, what you've done, is really important, because obviously when we see this in the raw that we've seen here, looks really bad. But knowing what you're doing is really important, I think, to all of us, including our residents. I just want some sort of report, not to make too much work, but you've done the work, but I think we should formalise it. That's my view.
Okay, well, do we have a recommendation then for us to ask the HRB to continue to report on this in their meetings until these actions are completed? Is that a fair proposal?
Is that something that would come back to? Sorry, I'm a bit confused. Is that something that what would we be asking HRB to come back to us? So
we have sight of this anyway. So we have sight of activity by virtue of our regular review of Appendix D, the monitoring of agreed actions. All of the Priority 1 and Priority 2 actions are listed, at this committee. So we can review that ourselves, but actually this is a matter for HRB. So HRB is where I believe this should be being scrutinised and reported. It should be added to their agenda, and our proposal would be that it is added to their next agenda for discussion and review.
Thank you, but just to double check, that's notwithstanding the role that we're playing in assuring that, being reassured that they have the right controls in place, which is something that they're looking at putting in place in terms of the technology they're going to be using and so on.
Correct, it's in addition to. So I've made a proposal. Do we have a seconder? Second, Councillor Goodman, and all those in favour? Okay, and any against? Any abstaining? Councillor Collins, thank you. Connor, do you wish to add anything else?
No, just to say that I think I've already mentioned it, but Appendix E has got the full breakdown of our progress against the plan, so you can see what audits we've completed and the individual opinion ratings that we've given. And then on page 28, that gives an overview of the current position with outstanding internal audit actions. So there is a dashboard report there that summarises where you are. At the time of writing, there were 95 actions that were open, which is an increase of 8 since the previous report. However, we have gone through a process to close and consolidate some actions as a result of the meetings that we had with the directorates. But that's all I have to say on that matter.
Thank you. Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I had a couple of other things. I just wanted to highlight the planning enforcement, which I think is on page 31, but it might be on a different page, which is in Appendix D, monitoring of agreed actions. This is something that's very important to our, certainly to my members, whatever, it's not my members, sorry, to my community residents that keep saying, you know, we're taking these actions, we're doing these things, we're going through appeals, we're winning them, and then they're not being enforced. It was supposed to be done on the end of June this year. Waiting for a response from the office to confirm whether the schedule of delegation has been updated. I don't know what that means. And then, if you want me to carry on, performance management, again, just a point on there, the performance management, performance indicator reported the missing some indicators for key priorities at the council. The first corporate performance indicator report with the revised indicators will be presented to Cabinet in November. Is that happening? I couldn't see it when I looked at the agenda for Cabinet in November, but I might be wrong because it might have been buried in there and it was only released a couple of days ago.
Okay, these are fair questions. Yes, senior team will follow that up and get back to us, okay, on that specific point. Okay, hold on, Councillor Barlow. Councillor Levine.
May I just ask a point of information? In Appendix D, you've got in progress, overdue, and evidence check. What's the difference between in progress and evidence check, if I may?
So in progress is an action that the service is continuing to do. So they've started doing the action and they haven't finished it yet, essentially. An evidence check. So in order for us to close an action, we need to get evidence that it's been completed. So where it says evidence check, we will have requested that the officers provide us with information to show what they've done. But that check has not been completed at the time of this writing the report.
Okay. I think a fair challenge, given we've got most of the senior team here, or the entire senior team, and we're grateful for that, of course, is does the senior team feel that they've got sufficient resource to address all of these 95 actions?
I'll go first. So we have, because this was a concern of this committee in terms of the number of actions outstanding, also I think the point made over the date of implementation and where it's been changed to a revised date, in that originally those dates have been agreed by management and then they've been revised. So I think there is an element here of we've had a busy few years, to be honest, in terms of number of reviews, number of actions that we're working through, and perhaps a bit more realism. Or I think the landscape has probably changed, and we first set the date for when these actions would be tackled. So I think there's more realism in the revised dates. But also, we have taken on board, again, what the committee was saying. So Connor has worked with each of the directorates to go through each of the action plans, and we have made better progress, I think, in terms of implementation. And as you say, there are a number of evidence checks. So the officers are saying, we've completed that action now, but we just need to provide the evidence to audit to close it down. But there's still work to do. And I think as a management team, we perhaps this is now coming quarterly to our executive leadership team for review. And I think it's at that we can take a sensible approach about, can we realistically do this? How important is it? Is it still that up top priority for us? If not, we need that discussion back with audit and the risks around that, and just take it in the round, I think.
I think just to add to what Simon's saying, which is absolutely right, and just demonstrates where we are as a local authority. We've shared with you previously as members that we are in the process of purchasing a corporate performance system to support us with ensuring that we've got the checks and balances in place to keep the appropriate track on the actions outstanding of all of the reports, all of the reviews, and all of the risks that as a local authority we're monitoring. We've also just confirmed our senior management team, so that's our directors across the local authority, which will now enable us to look at that wider skills gap within the organisation and ensure we've got the right people doing the right thing at the right time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald, yeah.
Can I just take the opportunity to note on it, since we're going through Appendix D on page 28, that the open management actions does seem to have significantly come down since the last time we looked at it, and this committee did ask management to go away and sort of tidy up this list, if you don't mind me saying, because there seem to be a lot of outstanding actions, and it really does look like a much better handle has been got on them. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's noted. Councillor Goodman.
I think that to take the point that's just been made, I think one of the reasons that some of the dates, the open ones have reduced is because we've changed the date. And I think Simon is quite rightly raised the issue that some of these, we got 57, and actually we've got 8 which are over 3 years old. And what I like about what I've heard today is acknowledgement that we are working towards that. And I think the council benefits from that, because some of these things may have been wrong for some time, but we're now got a process to put all right. The important thing for me is to make sure any of the audit open ones, the 57, are any of them so important we ought to get done as a priority. I've looked in I think Ian's about the enforcement is perhaps a point, but generally I think you've got a handle on that. But I also want to take this opportunity to thank SWAP for changing the way they present this. We raised this issue several months ago that we found it very complicated to get a handle. I think what you've done here is a real step forward, and I find it very easy to understand, and I think we can develop that more, so thank you for that.
Okay, thank you for those comments. So we have a recommendation. Committee is requested to note the progress made in the delivery of the 24-25 internal audit plan as at the start of November, and the findings reported. Do we have a proposer for that recommendation, please? Councillor Levine, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Fitzgerald, thank you. All those in favour? Okay, and any against? And any abstain? Thank you. Councillor Collins abstains. Thank you very much. Thank you, SWAP team. You're going to have to hang on, though. You know that, don't you? Okay, we move on to agenda item 9, which is draft disclaimers of opinion due to backstop 21-22. And we welcome Peter Barber from Grant Thornton. And Jackson. Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. So I will take this item and Peter will take the subsequent item. So we've previously discussed at this committee the national legislation that government intended to publish, and indeed did publish in draft in September 2024 in respect to financial statements audits within local government and the backlog that existed. What that legislation set out was that by the 13th of December this year, any financial statements audit up to and including the 22-23 financial year would either need to be finished or a backstop disclaimer opinion would need to be issued. And what the latter is effectively our opinion saying we have not been able to complete the work on the audit for whatever reason, and therefore we are not giving assurance on that set of accounts. We've discussed this topic a number of times at this committee. The documents in front of you today are the short form findings report, which sets out the things that we absolutely have to say to meet that legislation. It also includes in draft the 2 audit opinions for both the 21-22 and 22-23 financial years, which includes those backstop disclaimer wordings, and also 2 letters of representation that we ask management, the council, and this committee to note and consider. So, taking it through briefly in turn, the opinions themselves are standard wording across all backstopped audits for the financial statements elements, setting out that disclaimer point. The letters of representation are also standard wording, so we're not seeking any additional representations on any matters within those. The opinions do refer to VFM work that had been undertaken in those years, which committees previously discussed, noted, and we've seen the management responses. The next item, as you'll see, is the 23-24 value for money work that Peter will present. So that brings us more up to date on that. And within the findings report, a couple of things just to note out. So that includes some proposed fees within there. They will be subject to consideration by PSAA, and that's based on time charges and PSAA hourly rates. And you'll note that we also include the non-audit fees, the work done there around certification of various grant claims. So to confirm, although the proposed audit fee for that 22-23 financial year is lower than the non-audit fees, normally that would trigger further consultations and considerations around independence. So we consider that, we don't consider that is a threat to independence on the basis that the 2 claims we look at, so it's the pooling of housing capital receipts and the housing benefit subsidy claim. Both of those are carried out under instructions set by government. It's undertaken on a routine basis each year at this council and at every other council who has either a HRA or benefits responsibilities. And the NAO in their auditor guidance confirmed that neither of those pieces of work would count towards a non-audit cap that they also include. That's not specifically set out in that findings report on today's agenda, but I did just want to note that, and that's the consideration that we and other audit firms have taken in these instances. It's unusual because normally the audit fee would be in excess of those other 2 pieces of work, so it's unusual, which is why I raise it to you today. So following discussion on this and the statement of accounts, which comes next, subsequent to me getting signed versions of those statements with the right signatures on the right pages, I'm in a position then to issue those opinions almost immediately after receipt of those. I mentioned the backstop date is the 13th of December, so we have lots of time still, but I think both Simon and I are very keen to get this resolved as quickly as possible. I wasn't going to say anything more on the documents themselves, so I think I'll open for questions.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for Jackson on the disclaimers of opinion? We'll start with. Yeah.
I just had 2 or 3 on the general, what you've done down to page 40 odd, is looking at, and we've already asked the question earlier about other councils, how well are we compared to other councils? Are there many other councils in the UK? And from your point of view, can you confirm that actually this isn't about there's not a lot else we could have done as a council, or is this the result of us not doing things in a timely manner? And the two other points is, in the audit plan on page 46, you identify 4 areas in the 21-22 audit plan, 4 areas: management, override, improper revenue. Unless I've missed it, do you comment on those later on today? Because I can't know. So I'd just like confirmation that we've moved that forward. And can you help me by explaining what the materiality is, the fact that you're not able to set one? What does that mean to us as a council? Because I tried to understand it and I struggled. Thank you.
Sure. So through you, Chair, if that's okay. So helpful question. Sorry, it might have been helpful to give some wider context. So I don't have the number, but I'm expecting there are hundreds of these disclaimer opinions around the country. So you are absolutely not the only council to be receiving these. There are some councils in a position where their audits are fully up to date, so they won't be receiving the backstop disclaimers, but there are hundreds. Certainly, we talked about league tables. I have some councils fully up to date. I have some councils who will receive more backstop years than these two as well, so to give that context. In terms of the comments on the significant risks and materiality, I'll perhaps take together. So where we got to is we'd completed the 2021 audits and issued opinions on those. The council published its draft 21-22 accounts mid-January 2024, and the 22-23 draft accounts were published towards the end of May 24. By that point, even before January, the discussion around backstop and the fact that this was likely to be an outcome was public knowledge, and we were discussing that with Simon and through this committee. At that point, the original backstop date was intended to be end of March this calendar year. It's continued to push back because we all knew that this was in place and the date kept moving. At the time, we discussed and said there wasn't enough time to complete the 2 audit years that we're talking about here, 21, 22, 22, 23. It made more sense to focus on the current financial year, 23, 24. So that is the reason we then didn't do any further work. We had issued our audit plan, the one you refer to, which set out the normal financial statement, significant risks. We don't comment on those anymore because we've not done any further work on those. So what we're saying here is the council's published its draft accounts, but we've not audited those 2 financial years. Therefore, there is no further work to update the committee on those significant risk matters. And similarly, so materiality is linked to that. So each year we will set a materiality level. So we don't audit to the pound or the pence. We'll say something may be of such significance to the readers if it is material, and that materiality is a number, because we're auditing financial statements here. So whilst we did that within the audit plan we issued, we've not even done that planning work for 22-23, so we haven't got to a stage of setting a materiality. So hopefully that answers the questions that you raised, but happy to clarify.
To clarify, the four areas in the audit plan 21-22 seem quite important issues. Will you be taking those up when you start auditing now? Will they roll over? We just want assurance that they're being looked at.
So the short answer is yes, and Peter sat next to me will be reporting to you in due course about the findings in those 4 matters for the 23-24 financial statements.
I think Simon wanted to come in at this point as well.
Yes, so just to make members of the committee aware, we have raised questions with Grant Thornton on the 21-22 value for money work they undertook. This relates to the quality of the work and the assurance they gained in the process. In addition, I'm liaising with public sector audit appointments. So Jackson mentioned the PSAA. They hold the audit contract in terms of agreeing fees. So I've raised with them to ensure that we're satisfied in terms of the audit fee that will be levied for 21-22. So we've got 2 outstanding queries on our part in terms of the audit.
Councillor Barlow.
I think they've been answered, Chair. So, I think
that's very good. Then. Thank you very
much. I think we've been briefed over the last few meetings about this, that this is coming. Here it is, and I will be happy to propose it if you don't want to do it from a chair.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, then I'll move on to recommendations. I've not got a detail of the recommendation, but the recommendation would be to accept these disclaimers of opinion, both of them, and also the 2 letters of representation. So if we can do those en bloc, that would be appreciated. Do we have a proposer for that? Yeah, Councillor Barlow, and seconder, Councillor Levine. All those in favour? And any against? Any abstention? Councillor Collins. Thank you. That is carried, and thank you very much, Jackson. Thank you. That's much appreciated. We move on to item 10, which is the kind of stemming on from this, is the statement of accounts for 21-22 and 22-23. Those who are really keen amongst us will have dialed through to the accounts themselves and spent many hours of many nights poring over these numbers and studying them, but we still won't know them as well as John Symes. So I'll pass it on to John and for your report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, so yeah, just a brief introduction really of this report. Like you say, it's following on from the previous item on the agenda. So yes, the report is presenting the final statement of accounts for 21-22 and 22-23. And the previously discussed external audit reports will be incorporated into those accounts themselves, making them final. Just as a quick note, as always, as you've alluded to, they're very full, very technical set of accounts. But just to confirm, the outturn reporting at the time for those 2 particular years are the same as is reflected in the statement of accounts. So from that point of view, what members have received in the past is still the same. So the recommendation from the report is for the adoption of the annual accounts presented and delegated authority be given to the Chair and Director of Finance to sign. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions? Okay. It's worth stating, perhaps for the record, the achievement, actually, of the council during that period of time. By hook or by crook, the reserves increased considerably during that time. Presumably, unusable reserves, as they're defined, include pension fund, or mainly pension fund credits, etc., and they've increased dramatically during that time, as I guess investments have gone up. But also usable reserves in both those years increased. So, for the record, that's a commendable performance. So, thank you. If there are no questions on the accounts, then I'll move to the recommendation, which, as John says, is to adopt the when you're ready, to adopt the 21-22 and 22-23 statement of accounts and delegated authority is given to the Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee and the Director of Finance, Section 151 officer, to sign when all matters are concluded, and that the letters of representation be approved and signed by the Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee and the Director of Finance, Section 151 officer. Do we have a proposer for that? Councillor Goodman, thank you, and a seconder, Councillor Levine. All those in favour? And any against, and any abstentions? Councillor Collins, thank you. Abstains. Thank you very much, John. Okay, we move on to, gosh, another page on my script here. Item 11, the Interim Auditor's Annual Value for Money Report 23-24. And this time we do move on to Peter Barber from Grant Thornton. So welcome again, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. So item 9 and 10 have covered the 21, 22 and 22, 23 audit years. So we are now moving forward into 23, 24, recognising audit is a retrospective exercise. So just for complete clarity, just to remind members of this committee that as your external auditors, our roles are twofold: an opinion on your financial statements and the value for money conclusion. So this is an interim report and it will not be finalised until we've concluded our 23-24 opinion audit, hopefully by the end of February backstop deadline, summarising the findings for our VFM work for 23-24. So value for money means lots of things to lots of people, but for us in the public sector, it's based on the NAO code, and the NAO code specify 3 areas for attention. Firstly, financial sustainability. So they ask us to judge the council on budget setting, monitoring, reporting, medium-term financial planning, how you essentially deliver your services whilst maintaining financial stability into the medium term. And given the continued austerity, that is becoming increasingly challenging at a larger number of councils and is often a focus of many of our key findings across the country. The second area is governance, and how decisions are made within the council, how they are made in terms of basing those based on complete and accurate and timely information. There are a number of mechanisms that councils have in place to ensure effective governance. This committee is those charged with governance. So one of the things you need to do is gain assurance from a whole range of sources as to whether governance is effective in this council. It comes from internal audit, it comes from officers, it comes from third parties as well, and your challenge of decisions made. And then the third area is a wider area of economy, efficiency and effectiveness. And this is essentially how you deliver your services. How do you demonstrate that you deliver your services to the public in an economic, efficient and effective manner? And what we have in this report is our views for the 23-24 period of the arrangements in place at this council in each of those 3 areas. Now, inevitably, issues will be identified, areas for improvement will be identified, and that will result in recommendations. And there are different types of recommendations that we can give depending on the severity of the findings. And I'm actually going to take members, if I can, and let me just make sure I get the page number right. I'm going to take you to the right towards the end of the report, which is, I think, on page 113 of your papers, Appendix B. I'll just give everybody a second just to turn to that, because I think it's quite an important page in terms of explaining the outcome of our work. So, having completed the work, we can make a number of recommendations. And the most severe type of recommendations, the recommendations that would concern everybody in this room, are what we call statutory recommendations. They are what I would describe as the nuclear option, and they are where we have fundamental concerns about the way that a council operates. They are rare, but they are becoming increasingly prevalent, and you will be aware of a number of high-profile councils that have received statutory recommendations from their auditors over recent years. In the main, they tend to be financially based. The majority are the fact that the council is running out or has run out of money and poor stewardship of those financial funds. And to a lesser extent, there's often issues around governance and decision-making, member-officer relationships, member-on-member relationships as well. And there's been a number of high-profile cases at a number of councils where this has been raised and statutory recommendations made. Importantly for this committee, we are not making any statutory recommendations. We haven't at this council, and that in isolation, I think you can take a degree of confidence from in terms of this report and the arrangements at the council. That then leads me on to the next level down, which are key recommendations. And key recommendations arise when, on balance, we consider that in one or more of those 3 areas I mentioned, that arrangements are not fully effective. And what we therefore conclude is that there are significant weaknesses within an area, and we make key recommendations. And we have in this report 2 key recommendations. one in the area of financial sustainability and one in the area of governance. And I will go through those in a bit more detail in a few moments. And then that then leaves the lowest level of recommendations, which are improvement recommendations. And improvement recommendations are more to do with refining your arrangements that are already deemed to be effective. It's really trying to give you an insight into best practice, what we're seeing elsewhere. It's a nice to have, but not an essential. And within this report, we have 12 improvement recommendations. And all councils will receive improvement recommendations, and we will follow those up. And they are really about improving and striving to ensure that those arrangements are fully effective. So what I'm going to do now is go back to the summary position, and I'll take you back, if I can, to the pictorial on page 69 of your papers, where I've essentially summarised the position for each of those areas. And as I said, I'll take them each in turn. So what I'll do is I'll start with financial sustainability. And the detail here is on page 72 of your papers. And the financial sustainability concern is essentially around your housing revenue account. So the housing revenue account during the year under review, 23-24, was overspent by approximately 7.6 million. The large majority of this overspend was in the repairs and maintenance area, and that was unexpected. It wasn't planned for, and it emerged, and it had a significant impact on the HRA reserves and balances. So those have been, as a result of that significant overspend, significantly depleted. Our concern was that this was unexpected and that there was a wider issue here, and that potentially 23-24 wasn't the last year of the pressure, and that this would, if it continued into 24-25 and beyond, that you would run out of resource within your HRA. So within page 72, we've made a recommendation, a key recommendation, that the council reviews some of the assumptions that it makes in setting its overall budget, particularly the HRA, to ensure it accurately reflects the likely known costs that will be incurred in delivering elements of the HRA responsibilities, including repairs and maintenance. And as part of that, that you update and agree a sustainable business plan for the HRA that talks about not only maintaining the level of the balances you've got, but actually increasing them going forward to ensure that you do once again have that that contingency should it be required. I think it's also probably worth pointing out that we do recognise also within the general fund that there were, on individual lines within individual service areas, quite significant overspends in 23-24. Those were more than offset, interestingly, from a number of possible one-off sources of income, particularly investment income, that was far greater than budgeted. But given the variations on service spend and income generation, the importance of actually ensuring that there is absolute challenge to the budgets every year to ensure they are as accurate as possible, so you have enough confidence in those once you work through the year. So that is the first of the two key areas.
Peter, could I just suggest at that stage we just pause?
Yep.
Because you know, it is a key recommendation. And before we go on to the next one, which is in a separate section, which is in governance, then we give the committee and senior team a chance to reflect on that particular point in this report, if that's okay with you. Yep. So, any questions from committee on that particular point?
I think the only point is you've actually covered it. It surprised us that it was so much. And I think for this committee, it's having assurances that we are putting it right. And it's mentioned in other places regarding housing. And it's just, we just need assurances that financially we've got it covered. Because at the moment it is a problem. And I recognise that, but I just think we need to be assured that everything's under control. Well, everything under control. We're planning for it, and we've got the money to do the work that's needed. And I know we're going to have a new strategy come early next year, and that will be a cost. but how are we going to fund it is a concern of us all, I think.
Thank you. And Councillor Barlow?
Yeah, I mean, again, same sort of thing, I suppose, but I'm more concerned that it wasn't a little overspent, it wasn't a medium, it was a huge overspend. I mean, it almost beggars belief that you could miss it by that much, and someone from audit, wherever, didn't pick up on the fact that something was seriously wrong. And I know we are told it was all in the last couple of months. But again, I find that difficult to believe that anyone could squeeze that amount of spending. Even my, I'm not allowed to say ex-wife because I'll probably get told off for that, but even, of actually the ability to spend that much money at that amount of time. And are we confident? This is what worries me, and some of my residents have been saying. Are we confident that the money was spent and the money was checked, that the jobs were supposed to have been done? The amount of jobs we check, I don't know how it's possible that we could get to this point without anyone noticing. And this is what concerns me. It's all great having these people behind us that are employed to look at these things, but at what point does some sort of red flag go up that you are that much over budget?
I mean, with respect, we need to make sure that we contain this to the report at hand. A lot of what you've pointed at is control that is under the scrutiny of the HLB, but absolutely take your point. Okay, so we'll get a management response in a second, but Councillor Fitzgerald, thank you.
Thank you. I think this report did make concerning reading. Three things which struck me as being particularly concerning about the decisions that were made. One, that the decisions were made mid-year and outside the budgeting process. Two, without a spending plan in place. And three, in the absence of the HRA stock condition survey being actually presented to council. So I think I welcome the recommendation that the auditors have made. I might suggest that this be shared beyond this committee, this recommendation, and I'd like to understand what the chair and the ELT would recommend in terms of where that needs to go. And I think I'd like to understand what the recommendation is in terms of going forwards when it comes to making big mid-year financial decisions. What is the process currently? Is it felt that there needs to be any changes need to be made in order to make sure that the right controls are in place when we do so? Thank you.
If it's okay, I'll pass it on to Section 151 officer, who's standing here trembling, or sitting here trembling next to me. But yeah, over to you, Simon.
Okay, so a difficult one in terms of where we are in this report, and without going back over discussions that we've had. This issue's been to Cabinet, it's been to the Housing Revenue Board, it's been discussed at Council. So don't want to go through all of that again, but just, I suppose, to give you two areas in terms of the background. There's some quite blunt statements been made there about complete surprise, didn't know, massive overspends. Yes, the overspend against the original budget was significant, but if members go back and read the actual budget report that was set for that year, it did indicate that it was a rollover budget. There were reserves available to catch up on repairs and maintenance. So part of that was expected. It's the degree of it that I think caught us by surprise in terms of how red the flag should have been that we raised. So if you go back to Cabinet and Housing Review Board monitoring reports, it was in there in terms of we are now going over budget, but these reserves are sat there. And that got stronger as we went through the year. But the final position was significantly above what we thought it would be, and it is to do with that pattern of spend in the last few months, and our reports had already gone through. That spend, and as I said, I don't want to regurgitate quite significant debates that happened, but a lot was around whereby maintenance programmes hadn't occurred over a number of years, plan maintenance, and what we were seeing was the catch-up in terms of repairs and maintenance that were required on an urgent basis, coming through very quickly. So that's sort of a measure, if you like, in terms of not keeping up to date with your planned maintenance and then the impact of that on spend that's required fairly quickly, fairly urgently. The process that's been described in terms of having to come through with a revised budget, that's actually the correct thing to do, and was in terms of constitutionally, it's gone through Cabinet, gone through Council, went through the Housing Review Board first. In terms of, it's actually, we're part way through the year, that rollover budget that we set, we can see based on the outturn, based on officers coming in, doing an assessment of where we are with our housing stock, doing an assessment of what we actually needed to spend for health and safety for 24, 25 and 25, 26, culminated in that revised budget that went through your committees for approval. So that brings us up to date. In terms of monitoring of that revised budget, you've got on your agenda today the month 5 position, month 6 positions already gone to Council. There's that assurance level there of quite high monitoring that's going into the housing revenue account finance position. You're seeing through a committee level the monthly position, but we're actually seeing that on a weekly basis. So finance and housing meet on a weekly basis to review where we are, what's being spent. We've put in additional controls and measures. So working very closely with our housing colleagues and the finance colleagues together, there's literally, we're now having lists of all the work in train, before they go to an order stage, we're looking at what that program's looking like and are signed off with finance, housing together in terms of how much is budget, and we're budgeting almost on a weekly basis to make sure we keep within our budget limits. And to date, we're on track on budget. We're going through the process of setting next year's budget. As I say, a lot of that work had already been done to identify what we needed to spend in 5-6, and we're looking at producing a balanced budget at the moment for our working papers, but that will come to members. What the important piece of the puzzle, though, is the stock condition survey, which members have had presented that overview to them. And what that's showing us, so we saw that mountain of work that was required in terms of immediate repairs. That gave us an indication that our stock was probably, was in a significantly worse position than actually what our condition survey is showing us. So we seem to be coming out, and Catherine and others may want to add to this, seem to be coming out about average for a local authority. So we know we've got to programme in a number of works, work out the affordability of that. So we've got to do a 5-year, 10-year, 30-year business plan to see how we can bring our stock up to where it needs to be, but also that regular programme work, which then stops that emergency spend that we saw in 3-4. And that's the piece that's happening now. I think from my point of view, members have been very well informed about that process, been informed about what the timeline is of the various reports coming through and the work that's needed. So I think the transparency of that is clear for members to see, from my perspective.
Okay, thank you for that. Go outside committee, Councillor Arnott. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Can you hear me, Yehudi? Okay, good. Thank you very much. I'd just like to, as leader of the council, endorse what Simon has just said. And I think there's always a political, there's even an employment dimension to this, isn't it? We are absolutely delighted this year to have new senior officers in place who've got a hold of this, and in particular Tracy, and in particular Catherine. As councillors, many councillors had expressed concern over a number of years about whether this was a sort of time bomb waiting to go off. And I think Simon has alluded to, he hasn't put it in these terms, but perhaps an underspend, a significant underspend, nay, perhaps neglect of the housing stock over a period of many decades. And some good councillors have tried to bring that to the attention of officers. Those officers have now departed the organisation, and we've got a fantastic team in place in whom we've got total confidence. And I suppose Grant Thornton can only do what Grant Thornton could do. But, you know, perhaps if slightly tougher questions had been asked by Grant Thornton 5 or 6 years ago around our housing service, you know, maybe that would have helped things to come to light. Just batting that boat back over the net at you slightly. But where we are now, as Simon has said, has been exhaustively explained to members. We've had members in this room, or every member invited. They've had a full briefing, granular briefing on where everything actually stands. And so moving forward, I would expect to see a great improvement in the service. But I would thank both Grant Thornton and the members of this committee for looking at this now and rightly saying, ouch. But having said that, I'm confident as leader of the council that we are in a good place now, and I would hope, Peter, for you to be able to reflect next year back on the actions taken this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair. I hear what the leader says, all the rest of it. Obviously, our job here is to scrutinise and to, sorry, not scrutinise, wrong word probably, audit, check the balances are there and being done. I just bring your attention to the HRA accounts, whatever. We have month 5 in front of us. Again, surprising we're dealing with month 5, not month 6 really now, because we're now in, I don't know, month 8 or whatever it is. The difference between month 5, the actuals that we are spending on repairs and maintenance general, 1.995 million actual on month 5. On month 6, it jumps to 3.135 million. So in a month, it's jumped that 1.2 million pounds. You know, not quite, well, it's over 50% of what we've done in the first 5 months. I just worry, are we on top of it? Or is this sort of like, we'll play catch up and we don't really know, and then suddenly you get big chunks come in that we're not aware of? Or do you have a draw in that thing?
Okay, I hear what you said. No, it's a valid question, and we'll come to answer it in a second. What I would say in terms of your point about why are we reviewing month 5 is I question this as well. It's actually down to the timing of the issue of the reports. The report has to go to Cabinet, I believe, first before it comes to this committee. As this was scheduled, the report for month 6 hadn't been presented to Cabinet before this committee was scheduled, and therefore what we've asked for in future is the timings are tweaked so that this committee follows Cabinet, so that we can always look at the most up-to-date numbers. Okay.
HRB had it previously. So HRB had this, that's where I got it from. The month 6 was HRB.
This is what I'm being told. Okay, this is why. Hold on. Secondly, we've just had the reassurance from Simon that we're on budget. Okay, so his assessment of the performance of the HRA for this year is that we are on budget. And the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. Do we hit our budget at the end of the year? The important thing is, are the controls now in place to monitor the level of spend on a weekly basis? And when I say level of spend, and people have heard me say this in the past, the spend occurs when the order is placed. It's not when the cash leaves your account. So the control has to be in place at the placement of the order. And that is the control that is now being monitored on a very detailed basis, I understand. And that's what's giving us, or getting us back under control in terms of spend. Okay. Any other points on this? In which case I'll return to Peter for the rest of your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll now move on to governance, and before I elaborate on the second key recommendation, it's probably worthwhile referencing a number of improvements between VFM years. So in prior years, we have made observations about cultural issues, roles of officers and members, and we've also actually made observations about the effectiveness of overview and scrutiny, and for that matter, the Audit Committee as well. You will note from the report that there are no concerns being identified of a serious nature in any of those areas, which is great. But also, as I said in my introduction, governance is a very wide area, and the one area that we are bringing to your attention today via a second key recommendation is in relation to the preparation of the audit of accounts, and it leads on really from Councillor Goodman's observations earlier. So you will be aware from the prior items the fact that the 2 years are being backstopped, and as Jackson alluded to, this is a national issue. I think at length at the last audit committee I was asked a question about why there are so many audits not being delivered in a timely manner, because this is public funds and this is how you demonstrate accountability and transparency. You have your internal reporting, but the financial reporting externally is really important because it provides decision makers with confidence that the accounts are true and fair and an appropriate basis for budget setting. So the reason for the challenge is the increased amount of work that auditors need to do to be able to give a clean opinion, and it also reflects the increasing complexity of councils. If I go back 20, 30 years, there weren't many councils with alternative service delivery models. They weren't, their income sources were few and far between. You had your business rates, your council tax, and you had an RSG funding from government that's long gone. Now, because of austerity, you are having to seek money in lots of different ways, and the accounts are massively more complex. And when we audit the accounts, if there are 100 plus pages, we check everything in those accounts. It takes an awful lot of time, and we absolutely go to town on certain areas, rightly or wrongly, in terms of land and buildings, etc. So there is a very significant increase in resource ramifications for auditing. We spend far longer doing it, we charge you more, and it is a massive commitment from your people. Our concern here is about the ability of the council to produce complete and accurate timely accounts, and it reflects the fact that the last set of signed accounts were 2021. I'll get my years right there, and that you do at the moment have 2 years where you have that where you won't have any assurance, and the importance of the council committing to supporting the finance function in particular to enable them to support the audit process to get the accounts over the line. I'll probably preempt a question about 23-24. At the previous committee, I was asked about how that was progressing. We talked about the delay in production of the 23-24 accounts. Simon articulated that the sole reason for that really was the valuation of the council dwellings and getting them on the system. So we were slightly later starting. I've had various updates with Simon and our team, and we are not where we want to be for 23-24. We are committed as our officers to getting the work done, but there is a risk at the moment, and our commitment as Grant Thornton is that we will continue to push to the very end. The aspiration was, when I think we met last, was that we would have the work done by Christmas, and that would have given us 2 months contingency before the deadline for the 23-24 accounts of the end of February. What we will be doing now is extending that period into the new year, and we will be working to seek to get that work done by the deadline. If it misses, and all I'm saying is that there is a risk at this stage, then we will have to backstop the audit. The problem has been compounded, in my view, and I welcome Simon's view on this as well, by the fact that the key contact within finance left 2-3 weeks ago, and she was fundamental to query responses and answering our questions, which couldn't have been predicted. And you have reacted quickly. You've brought somebody else in, but clearly the challenge for them is hitting the ground running, recognising, whilst very experienced, they have not got that experience of actually producing the accounts and the working papers to support the thing. So this recommendation really is about how critical it is, as quickly as possible, we get to a position where East Devon District Council is getting their accounts signed off in accordance with the deadlines.
Thank you, Peter. Simon, do you want to comment on that before we take any questions from the committee, please?
Yeah, just briefly, I think that's a fair assessment. It is a real challenge for us. Like most local authorities, and there is a national problem of having qualified accountants. That's recognised by, particularly in the public sector. The Local Government Association have highlighted that as their key risk for local authorities at the moment is qualified accountants, but particularly in producing final accounts. It's only probably one, if you take all the counts, smaller district councils, there's probably one or two people in a district council that understand the accounts, and the other side of it is probably one or two auditors that come in and look who understand the accounts as well, probably. So it is a real difficult situation. So we are quite a small authority, so we have one individual who was our technical individual on producing the accounts. Everyone has to get involved, and we'll have various sections of the accounts to produce, but we have, for the first time, we actually allocated one individual to make sure that the full process was controlled, and to importantly be the audit link with Grant Thornton to make sure that all the working papers were prepared, produced on time, and given all the queries that come up are dealt with on a timely manner. And just to put it into context, you know, it probably takes us, John will shout at me now, but probably three months to produce the accounts, something like that. It probably takes audit and 3 times that in terms of the auditing of the accounts. So it is a huge process. A lot of resource goes into it. So that individual left, got a better job, good luck to them, but left us in a bit of a shtuck. So we brought someone in as quick as we can, has the right background in final accounts experience, but as Peter said, didn't prepare our final accounts. So we'll be longer in terms of putting together the various questions that are coming forward from the audit, and also the questions will be across the authority. So it'll be from our valuation team, it'll be from our legal team. You know, so we're reliant also on the rest of the council in answering those questions. So it's challenging. We're doing what we can. We're determined, like Grant Thornton, you know, we've got to complete this by the deadline. The issue we've got is we've got a limited team. Grant, and this is what I was discussing with Peter before this, Grant Thornton, to be fair, put a lot of resource into this audit. The resources sat there now auditing. I cannot suddenly bring in a load of accountants to match that. So I have to spread it out over a period because we're producing the estimates at the moment, the budgets for next year. So it is a problem that I'm not hiding from committee.
Thank you. Any questions on this particular point? Councillor Barlow.
Just one question. So are we protecting ourselves with the person that does this critical job for us? Are we sort of making sure that the next contract says you can't leave between these dates? Well, no, but you do that in business. You do that in business. You put in a file there that at the end of the day, do it in football. You know, you can't leave people suddenly at certain times, or it's going to cost someone. You know, it's bad for their reputation and the rest of it. Also, are we talking about the improving the economy, efficiency and effectiveness net yet, or is that going to come in a minute?
Not yet. We're still focusing on this specific recommendation, and but your point about protecting, we've got a temp in, so you know we can't really write that report or that instruction to them. So you know, I think our discussions have revolved around get whatever resource needs to be in that can be got in, and you know the problem is it's a bit like hen's teeth, as Simon has described. They are very rare beasts, and they're right at this moment in time. They're all gainfully fully employed, so it's very difficult to whistle them up. They're not sitting on their in their armchairs, twiddling their thumbs, waiting for a phone call, because they are working on other authorities' accounts. So it's very challenging. My extension of that is to ensure for next year we've got sufficient resource in place, and this will come rolling over the horizon very quickly as we get towards year end, is the preparation of next year's accounts and audit for 24-25, you know, we've got to have sufficient resource, both budgeted and actually secured in place to try and get that. Well, yeah.
If I can check, because I think that's valid. So the establishment we've got is sufficient in my belief. We're carrying 3 vacancies in the team, and that's what's causing us the issue. We've tried all sorts of means and measures to appoint. Currently, we're out with Penna, who are well known in this area, and we've got interview dates lined up for the 12th of December if they can produce us a short list. But their short list wasn't looking too long last time I saw it.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Levine.
I'm struggling a little bit because you've just told us there have been big changes in all the accounting rules, etc. And I just heard from Simon that things are getting more complicated, few people understand it. So what's the rationale in making things so difficult?
Over to you, Peter, for your hopefully a brief synopsis of government policy over the last 15 years.
It's a brilliant question. So there have been attempts to simplify the audit process that have so far not delivered any change, and if anything, the level of scrutiny and challenges is going the other way. You know, if I compare, you know, the NHS, another, you know, the public sector, the NHS have templated accounts that are 20 pages long. They have 6 weeks to produce them, and we have 2 months to audit them, and they invariably get done because they're much more simplistic. The CIPFA code is very detailed, and it requires you as councils to go into inordinate detail on your finances. I've got some upper tier councils that have over 300 pages of accounts, and it is very, very complex. We as a firm, other firms are lobbying to seek to simplify certain elements of the accounts. We could talk about this for a long time, but I'll give you one example that I think we've discussed in the past. If you're a business down the road making widgets and you want to go out and borrow some money from the bank, or you want to get a return to shareholders, the importance of the valuation of the strength of your balance sheet is really important. If you've got assets at the top of your balance sheet that are worth 40 million, if they're 35 or 45, that can be fundamentally important to actually getting that bank loan. If you've got East Devon District Council with hundreds of millions of pounds of assets at the top of its balance sheet that it's had for many, many years, is very unlikely to dispose of, are used to provide services. Really, does it fundamentally matter that they're 100 million or 105 or 100 or 95 million? Well, for me as the auditors, they do, because I am required when I sign your accounts to say they are materially accurate, and my materiality is £1.5 million at East Devon, and therefore the amount of detail I have to go into is, in my personal view, excessive, but I will only sign those accounts once I've satisfied myself professionally that I have that assurance. And that is an example, one of many, of the challenges that we face. We are cogs in the wheel. You have to produce those accounts in accordance with the code. I have to audit them to the required auditing standards, and it is very, very involved. Bigger organisations, upper tier organisations, have quite sizable finance teams. They're probably able to attract slightly higher qualified because they can pay, and they tend to have the capacity to support the audit process. We see it in a lot of smaller districts. It's difficult, but it doesn't negate the need for it to be done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barlow.
Who sets the 1.5 million sorry, the auditors do?
Yeah, I do. So under auditing standards, I am required to determine an appropriate basis for materiality. So I don't sign to the pound. The default position is gross spend. So that's what we use across the whole public sector. We look at your gross spend. Under auditing standards, I'm required to pick a range between 0.5 and 2%. I consider local government to be lower risk than a business down the road that may want to manipulate the accounts because people on performance-related pay. There is lots more incentives, inherent incentives, to misreport in the private sector, the public sector. So I actually go to the top end of that 1.5 to 2.2% range. I think I'm about 1.6 that I use, and that's purely down to the fact there's two years worth of accounts that have not been signed off. If it wasn't the case, I'd probably be nearer 2. So my materiality is higher than you would probably get in the private sector, but I still have to test to that, which is still only 1.5 million.
Okay.
Thank you. And just one final question. What percentage-wise, you're an accountant, what percentage chance do you think we've got of signing off the accounts?
He's an accountant, not a bookie. So,
well, very, very true, Chair, but at least understands percentages, hopefully.
So he's already intimated that there is a risk. Okay, so I don't think we need to go into percentages at this stage. We are looking at mitigating the risk. I don't think a percentage would be helpful. Peter, is there more that we wish to discuss on the rest of the report?
Chair, I was just going to pick up on the third area, which is economy, efficiency and effectiveness, and that's on page 71. So lots of councils have this as a significant weakness. You do not. So on balance, we believe that you do have effective arrangements in place for ensuring economy, efficiency and effectiveness, which is really positive. Absolutely more you can do, as ever. And there are a number of improvement recommendations. I think there's 4 in there that you will see management responses to. There's management responses to all the recommendations, the key recommendations and the improvement recommendations. Chair, I wasn't going to go into any detail on them, given their improvement recommendations, but I do think you can take a degree of assurance on that, on the 3 E's, that there isn't anything that we need to bring to your attention that's significant. And I was going to stop there and take any further questions.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the committee? Councillor Barlow.
Yeah, sorry to keep on, Chair, but again, I've read through this, whatever, and on page 98, the Budget Setting and Capital Allocations Panel monitors the delivery of large projects, reports to the Cabinet, critical issues such as change of thing. These are considered monthly by senior management teams and quarterly by the Budget and Capital Allocation Panel. That panel hasn't met even this year. Sorry, it's just met on the first time this year. Last time it met was in December 23. We're supposed to have 4 things to bring us up to date with where our projects are. Again, it's cancelled due to postponed, whatever. If it's critical, it should be meeting so that we can see how our projects are going forward. Are we delivering them on time and on budget, not having to wait a whole year for it? It's just something I wanted to point out on that.
Okay, thank you. I would point out as well that we are referring to year 23-24, so this would have been an assessment of the 23-24 pattern of meetings, but your point is made. Okay, so.
But again, Chair, this is the point of this committee, isn't it? To make sure that we don't have faults going forward.
As I said, your point is made, Councillor Barlow. Okay, and Councillor Goodman.
Audit is about finding things that we could do better. And I think you summarised some really good points here on your recommendations of what we could do. When I looked at the previous ones, i.e. the ones on page 103 and 104, what concerned me there is it says on point 7, the council must ensure the response effectively at pace to the House and Ombudsman's recommendations. And we were one of the worst ones in the country for this year when you did that report. And when it says it's complete, and yet this year, we are also on it for last year at 87%. So what concerns me there is, are we doing the right things to get that right? And I know Housing's got many problems, so that would be one thing. I think what I would find useful, because I thought, well, have I seen that as an action plan last time we met? And actually, I'm just wondering if each meeting we had an update on where we are with these, I think, really good recommendations, because it will make the council better. And that's what we must always look at. Not look at it as a criticism, but look at it as a way actually we can do things better. I'm just wondering if we had a very simple report that updated us on what, without obviously spend a lot of time, but I just feel that we will review it today, but if we don't review it again for a year, we've lost a year. Whereas actually, if we know we've done it, then we move on.
Okay.
Don't make that.
Okay, no, that's a good point. I'll go to Tracy, actually. Tracy, you mentioned that the senior team reviews this quarterly. If they do review it quarterly, could we be, as the audit committee, have have sight of the output of that review and that be circulated to us.
Thank you. I see absolutely no problem with us doing that moving forward. I think the challenge that we've got, that we all know, is not having that corporate system and the ability to then be able to produce those reports from that quarterly update. But yes, moving forward, we will be able to do that.
Okay, all right. Thank you. If there's no other questions, then the recommendation is that we note and accept the report from sorry, Councillor Barlow.
Well, I've got loads of flags here. I'm not going to bring them all up now. But again, the council should consider the appointment of 2 independent auditors to the Audit and Governance Committee.
That is underway.
It's on the agenda today.
Okay, so Councillor Barlow, I think we've spent a lot of time on this particular report and given the rest of the agenda, I would move that we go to the recommendation, which is to accept the report and note its contents. So, do we have a?
Sorry, what Tracy just agreed, that we do review it each quarter, because I think that's real good governance.
So the recommendation is that with effect from the new financial year, then a quarterly review of the actions outstanding is undertaken by the senior team and circulated to this committee. Is everyone happy with that to be added to the recommendation? Got that, Debbie? Yeah. So that's a proposal. Do we, or that's a suggestion? Do we have a proposer? I was going to say. I proposed it. I'll move it from the chair. Do we have a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Goodman. All those in favour? Oh, blimey. Unanimous. Woohoo. Well done, Councillor Collins. Lovely. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Peter. Much appreciated. And I know you and Jackson need to shoot off now, so thank you very much for your time today. Thanks. It is just on 2 hours. I would suggest perhaps we can have one more item and get through the period 5 financial report and then suggest a break, because is that okay with everybody? Yeah. Okay. So we move on to agenda item 12, which is the financial monitoring report for 24-25, month 5 August. So John, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this report presents the latest published update, which went to Cabinet on the 2nd of October. It's already been mentioned in terms of the timing of this report to this particular committee. So yes, that is something we are taking away and just seeing if we can get those timings a little better. The next report update is actually going to Cabinet this evening. So if I may, Chair, without stealing the thunder of tonight's meeting, I just wanted to give a brief update of what month 6 is saying. So again, overall, the summary of month 6 is positive outcomes, positive positions for the general fund and housing revenue account. So the general fund remains in a favourable position. Current predictions, £968,000 surplus at the year end. Their service variances, as reported in this evening's report, but mainly the largest favourable variance within there is Treasury investment income again. In terms of the year-end predicted general fund reserve balance, it's currently £5.5 million. Moving on to housing revenue account, again, some Simon explained earlier around what we're doing now in terms of the monitoring of that, namely the weekly meetings that we're now doing. So in terms of that area, housing revenue account is currently predicted to be within the agreed revised budget that was approved by Council in July. So following those weekly meetings, we're now picking up actual expenditure, actual income, all the work programmes as they are developing, and any commitments. Work in progress is we're calling it internally, but we're picking up all those commitments as we're going. So in terms of the housing revenue account, the year-end position is going to be on budget. So we're predicting that the balance will be at the revised budget level of 1.763 million. So just as a brief update, Chair, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, and thanks for bringing forward the month 6 review as well. But any questions from committee? Okay, thanks. Well, the proposal is to note the contents of the report, but we appreciate that. Thank you, John, and also, as I say, for advancing month 6 as well in advance of cabinet even. Ooh. So don't minute that, Debbie. So that's the proposal. Do we have a proposer? Yes, Councillor Levine, and a seconder, Councillor Goodman, and all those in favour. And any against? Oh, and an abstention. Yeah, Councillor Collins abstains. Thank you. All right. We have had 2 hours. I suggest we have a... Can we keep it to a 20-minute break, do you think? Is that reasonable, or a half hour? What do we want? Suggestions? 5? What about officers? Do we need... Yeah. No, we're not providing lunch. We're providing time. Yeah. So I would suggest half hour, if that's okay. So we can reconvene at 2:10, please. Oh, sorry, 1:10. 1:10. Sorry, just to scare you. 1:10. Thank you.